Hello and welcome back to another episode of Injustice For All MMA. My name is David, and this episode is for UFC 311 Makhachev versus Moicano. If you're listening to this is very late. Not only is it late at night, but it's February the 5th, 2025. I've gotten to this card so late that I don't know whether I feel annoyed by this card or I'm just tired. I think it's a mixture of both, but there's a lot to complain about this card. You know, I've seen the headline for MMA Guru's video where it says GOAT card ? And while there are some nice finishes on the card, there's just too much to nitpick. And there's too much that I'm just really, really super fucking grumpy about. I want to start off by saying that I've already watched this card. And what I mean by that is the night of the actual fight, right, which was, I believe, January 18th, I saw the pay-per-view with friends, right, but I wasn't scoring it. I was just enjoying it. And I saw a little bit of the prelims, and then I saw the main card in totality. So I've come back now to score it officially in my way, and I'm going to share some of the thoughts I had during it and then scoring it for the fights that I saw at the time. There's just a lot going on. This card gave me, it just made me mad. It made me mad because it reminded me of all the things I hate about MMA, which is Merab being... I like Merab. Maybe I'm mumbling too much, so I'm coming off away, but I like Merab. But there's a thing he did in this fight that just pissed me off, and we'll get to it when we get to it. But this whole card is just filled with things that I hate. Fighters affecting the scorecards in ways that aren't fighting. Okay? Fights that remind me of other fights where people get robbed, but nobody cares and nobody feels as though the person got robbed because of how excuse me, because of the optics of the fight, because of the way the fight is being commentated on, the commentary just being wrong 80% of the fucking time. I mean, this whole card had me, there was steam coming out of my ears because everything that went wrong optically on this card was pinching me in the head. So let's start off with the first fight. Okay. Ulanbekov versus Carpenter. I had this 30-27. 30-27. It's a standard 30-27. This shouldn't be any different. It really shouldn't be. First round, it's close on the feet with the edge to Carpenter. Carpenter's kind of outstriking him by a little bit, but Ulanbekov gets a takedown with a little bit of ground and pound. He wins the round. This round is scored like this pretty much all the time. Carpenter, excuse me. If you can tell, I'm kind of sick. Carpenter was pretty active on the bottom. In that first round, he was very active on the bottom. He was active on the bottom in the second round. But in the first round, he was very, very active on the bottom. But Ulanbekov landed good enough ground and pound to deter any sort of, stealing of the round for Carpenter. We'll talk about other fighters who are just poor on the ground and don't want to administer any bit of ground and pound at all. the levels of which the commentary will talk about one fighter being active and another fighter being active is just insane to me. But we'll move on, or else we'll be here all day. Second round, both fighters get a takedown, but Ulanbekov has much more ground and pound. While Carpenter is still active on the bottom, Carpenter gets his own takedown. Very little ground and pound. Little to no ground and pound, actually. And then Ulanbekov gets a takedown, and he lands an immense amount of ground and pound. So there you have it on that one. You go to the third round, and Ulanbekov has a takedown with ground and pound for about a minute plus. Again, Carpenter was active on the bottom. That's pretty much the round. That's pretty much the scorecard. That's what happened in the round. We go to the judges' scorecards, and Brian Tyler and Jonathan Romero, they scored correctly, 30-27. Rafael Davis, honorable mention. He gives the second round to Carpenter. That doesn't make any sense. It makes no sense. They both get a takedown. One lands a stupid amount of ground and pound. The other doesn't. Pretty simple. Honorable mention. It's a bad scorecard. Go to the next honorable mention. Turcios versus Sopaj. I had this 29-28. This is where I started getting grumpy, because this has happened. This happens too often. Excuse the coughs. They're going to happen a lot. This is where I start getting very, very grumpy, and I start feeling like I'm being gaslit, or that maybe my eyes are deceiving me. But my eyes aren't deceiving me. Unless I'm blind, God forbid, my eyes cannot deceive me. And this is where I start to really crash out, okay? It's 29-28. I have the last two rounds for Sopaj, the first round for Turcios. Okay, in the first round, Sopaj gets a takedown, but he's outstruck by about 8+ strikes by Turcios. I want to give you the true depiction of this fight, of this round. Turcios is outstriking Sopaj the entire round. Very simple. He's outstriking him. He's pressuring him. Most of the strikes are very clean. And Sopaj, while also landing occasional strikes as well, are very clean as well. And he gets a takedown as well. But this round, by the commentary, is depicted as though, because Sopaj is landing cleaner strikes at a clip that is so small, and because he gets a takedown, that means he wins the round. In fact, so much to the point where they're dismissing the strikes that Turcios is landing on Sopaj, and they're just going, well, he's a scrapper, or he's game. When that's not how they should depict the fight. There's many fights on this card where someone is outstriking the other person, and they're just dismissing them because they want to uplift the other fighter. A good example is Rosa versus Perez. The way they commentated that fight almost seemed as though they were trying to really put over Perez. When out of the two fighters, despite the outcome of the fight, Perez is really the worst. He's really not the better fighter than Rosa is. But that's beyond the point. We get back to this fight. Turcios is outstriking Sopaj. He's outstriking him in the clinch. He's outstriking him on the feet. Sopaj, again, is landing pretty frequently, but he's not outstriking Turcios. You go to the second round. Again, the first round isn't acknowledged as the round that goes to... It's not acknowledged by the commentary that this round should go to Turcios. Instead, they argue that it should go for Sopaj. You go to the second round. Sopaj barely outstrikes Turcios on the feet by about 2 strikes, and he has a takedown. Universally, that's always Sopaj's round. Okay. The strike numbers from round 1 are very inaccurate. They're very inaccurate. I'm so confused. Oh, I'm sorry. They're not inaccurate. Excuse me. There's one point. Here we go. Now my brain's intact. There's one point where Anik mentions the strike numbers of round 1, and whoever's doing the little clicker in the back, they're pretty accurate. They're showing that Turcios is up on strikes. Okay? Pretty well. And the commentary goes, that's not what we're looking at here. They're doing the classic, we're watching the optics of the fight, and that dictates who's winning the fight, when that's not the case. That's not the case. Turcios is outstriking Sopaj in the first round. I've repeated this 7 times. You get the point. You go to the second round, I just mentioned that. You go to the third round, Sopaj outstrikes and drops Turcios by about 12 plus strikes, and he also has a takedown. Boom. This is 29-28 Sopaj. The first round goes to Turcios. And to think that the first round doesn't go to Turcios is nonsense. It's absolute nonsense. Okay. We go to the scorecards, and Ron McCarthy and Brian Tyler all have it 30-27. They both have it 30-27. They give the first round to Sopaj. Honorable mention. That's not accurate. In fact, I remember watching it, and we saw, the occasional female judge, Felicia O, has the correct scorecard. This is the correct scorecard. I don't know what the fuck we're watching here. She gives the first round to Turcios and gives the last 2 rounds to Sopaj. This is the correct scorecard. Honorable mention of Brian Tyler and Ron McCarthy. It's fucking stupid that even till this day we've seen rounds like this. This isn't like we're seeing something new for the first time. We're not seeing something new for the first time. We've seen rounds like this. Turcios wins the first round. Instead, 2 judges give it to Sopaj because he's walking really cool and he lands like 2 shots every minute. Like, what is this? I didn't know we're scoring off of optics. If that's the case, then fuck. If we're scoring off of optics, then get rid of judges. We'll just let the crowd fucking vote who won. It's just so insane to me. We go to the next one. This one has my head in stilts. I still don't know whether or not I scored this correctly, or I scored this incorrectly, because it's not making sense to me. It's not making sense to me because I know I scored it correctly, and that's not me being pompous. I know I scored this correctly because we've scored fights like this 50 billion times, and the commentary, the judges are wrong. Let's start off with the judges. The judges are wrong just based off of the fact that we're about to go through it. The commentary is wrong because the entire time they talked about this fight, I'm talking about Carol Rosa versus Eileen Perez. The entire time they talked about this fight, they started off by glazing Eileen Perez. There's no need to glazing, okay? They started off by glazing her. Now let's get into the fight. We start off with the first round, okay? Let me see if I can find it real quick. Perez had a takedown. And I want to start this, before we even get to Perez had a takedown, they're striking on the feet. And Rosa is slightly up on strikes. Slightly, like barely up on strikes before this goes to the ground. Eileen Perez gets a takedown. Guys, I don't know how many times I have to talk about this. Even with my favorite fighter, Charles Oliveira, I still critiqued his level of ground and pound during the second Chandler fight. The fact that other fighters will get critiqued on their ground and pound. Other fighters will get mentioned of their ground and pound. But Eileen Perez, they didn't even bring up the fact that she was very inactive on top. Let me stop talking about commentary. Let's go through this. Rosa is outstriking Perez on the feet, barely, before the takedown happens. Perez gets the takedown and proceeds to land, I'm not lying, I wish I could show you tape. She lands little to no ground and pound, invisible ground and pound. She lays on her for about, I don't know, about a minute. Okay. Rosa is active on the bottom, by the way. Rosa is active on the bottom. Now, when I say active, she's not like Carpenter active, but she's active to where she's literally the only one striking when they're on the ground. That's how active she was. Very small, pitter-patter shots, relevant stuff coming from the bottom from Rosa, but it's still pretty effective. Or she's active, is my point. Rosa then proceeds to get up, and for the next minute plus, she starts to outstrike Perez. And I'm watching this, and I'm thinking to myself, oh shit, this is one of those fighter did nothing on the bottom. Fighter did nothing with the ground position they were given, and gets outstruck on the feet. If this were a fight night, this is scored. This round is scored for Karol Rosa. But for some reason, she gets back up on the feet, and Rosa proceeds to outstrike Perez by about 12 plus strikes. She outstrikes her clear. I don't know what the strike number... Dude, I don't usually do the strike numbers because I don't... You know me. I don't believe in the UFC strike numbers. But if I were to pull this up, and I'm going to try and pull this up in real time here. I'm going to try and pull this up in real time and see if it... if it works here. I don't like doing this because I just don't believe in the strike. I really don't believe in the strike numbers. I truly, truly do not believe in the strike numbers. And it's not loading for me. They're lying. They're lying. Is it loading? Is it not going to load? It's not going to load. Wow. It has to load. It just has to load. Are they going to show us round by round? They're not going to show us round by round. Oh, Lord, have mercy on my soul. Hold on. Why isn't this site loading? Whatever. It doesn't matter. It's a conspiracy. Let's get back to my point. My point is that she outstruck her clear. This round belongs to her. There's no debate. There's no debate. There's no fucking debate. Let's go to the second round. Okay. I put a close marker here. And I put a close marker here because I wanted to be, this one's kind of mixy. You could maybe argue this round for Perez. Rosa outstrikes Perez on the feet. She outstrikes her by about 4 plus strikes. She's outstriking her on the feet. Perez gets a takedown. She starts off by delivering no ground and pound, and then starts to kind of body head a little bit. Rosa's active on the bottom, but you can make an argument that Eileen Perez's ground and pound, little that it is more important than the ground and pound, than the bottom strikes coming from Rosa. Personally, I think Rosa lands more on the bottom, but, I'm trying to be, even in my head, I'm trying to be impartial here, so I give some leeway. I put a close marker on it on the second round, but I give that round to Karol Rosa. She outstruck her on the feet. She's basically outstriking her on the bottom, and Eileen Perez lands, guys, I can't say she lands no ground and pound in the second round, but she lands little ground and pound. And this is the one fight where we now have to start talking about control time. Control time. They mention it in the Grant Dawson fight, but at least in the Grant Dawson fight, control time is irrelevant. Control time is irrelevant, period. But control time, it's not irrelevant, period, but it's irrelevant in that fight because there's significant ground and pound coming from whoever is delivering it in Dawson versus Ferreira. I think it's Ferreira, but you get the point. In this fight, the ground and pound is so little that it personally it personally shouldn't even affect this round. But I was objective, so you can argue the second round went to Eileen Perez. That's fine. I gave it to Rosa and I put a close mark on it. We go to the third round. Come on. It's close on the feet. They're actually kind of back and forth. They gave the edge to Karol Rosa. I think she outstrikes her. She outstrikes Eileen Perez. But I put a close mark on it because they're kind of going back and forth. They're actually kind of trading in this third round. Guys, at the very least, this is a 29-28 for Eileen. For Jesus Christ, for Karol Rosa. This is at least a 29-28 for Karol Rosa. I gave it 30-27. I put close markers on it, so please don't kill me on the scorecard. But 30-27, I had it for Karol Rosa. You go to the scorecards, and I'm just disappointed. I'm disappointed and I'm hurt. Saul D'Amato, he gives the last round to Karol Rosa. Okay. Again, I'm not going to critique the last two rounds because I put a close marker on it, so I'm only critiquing the first round. But I agree with Saul D'Amato. He gave the last round to Karol Rosa. He gives the first round to Eileen Perez. And gives the second round to Eileen Perez. Chris Crail, he gives all three rounds to Eileen Perez. Somebody kill me. And Jonathan Romero. Jonathan Romero gives the first two rounds to Eileen Perez and gives the last round to Karol Rosa. This feels like when that Korean, I still don't know her name. I think it's Priscilla Cachoeira, when she fought that Korean guy. I keep referencing that fight, but I don't remember the name. Priscilla. I'm trying to remember. There we go. Priscilla Cachoeira. There we go. Now we're talking. Now we're remembering. Now, this fight reminds me of Priscilla Cachoeira versus Kim Ji-young where Kim Ji-young was robbed, and all three judges were in unanimous decision over a fight that Priscilla Cachoeira was stupidly outstruck. She was stupidly outstruck, and yet, for some weirdo reason, they gave her this fight. This is what this fight reminds me of, and nobody cares. I'm scrolling through Instagram. Nobody cares. You know what they care about? Eileen Perez's butt. First silhouette. First takedown. Crowd goes crazy for her ass. I'm just really, really pissed because nobody on the planet seems to care that Karol Rosa low-key got robbed, and nobody's gonna give a fuck. The commentary didn't give a fuck. They were too busy talking about Eileen Perez. They were critiquing Karol Rosa and her kind of lackadaisical striking pattern, which I think is fair. But in terms of this fight, they weren't locked in. They were just kind of just chatting and occasionally watching the fight and trying to make points that weren't even sound. They were critiquing Karol Rosa's striking pattern when they should have been critiquing, hey, when Eileen Perez has her on the ground, can she administer some ground and pound to at least chop up the way this round looks? No, they didn't talk about that. Go to the next honorable mention. Let's go to the next honorable mention and find it here because I don't even know how to feel at the moment. We go to the next honorable mention, okay, and that's Guskov versus Elekana. I give the first round to Guskov. I put a close marker for reasons I'll explain in a second. I don't think it's close. It's close, but I don't think it's close. This fight ends by submission by Guskov in the second round. Again, 10-9 in the first round for Guskov. In the first round, Elekana had a takedown with some ground and pound. He was looking for submissions, but with some ground and pound for about 3+ minutes, right? This ground and pound wasn't super significant. He was looking for submission pretty much the entire 3 minutes. He was landing decent ground and pound. It was nice ground and pound, but it was more he was on Guskov's back, right, hitting from that angle. So really not significant ground and pound. But then Guskov got a reversal and proceeded to land I don't want to say more ground and pound because I can't really count that, but his ground and pound was about twice more effective than Elekana's ground and pound. A lot more effective. He just kept landing. As soon as he reversed position, his ground and pound was just way stronger. Okay, but that doesn't mean he won the round yet. What definitely swung him this round is the fact that he then had a submission attempt to close the round. Obviously, the tap was after the bell, but he had a submission attempt that was deep and in to close the round. That is his round. Very simple. I put a close marker just to give credence to the first 3 minutes that Alenka did, if somebody wants to argue that point. So we go to the judges' scorecards. And all three judges, Saudi Amata, Chris Crail, and Jonathan Romero, they gave the first round to Guskov. We go to the next honorable mention. Reese versus Bekoev. This fight ends in a KO. I watched this fight live, okay? I watched this fight live, and I remember thinking to myself, back of the head, that led to the finish. And I was just kind of like mad, right? We're all kind of screaming in the living room. And then I watched it again, this time scoring it. And it's a questionable finish because I don't know how you can, like, how the ref can technically, like, jump in and stop this one. This was kind of unique because when the ground and pound begins, essentially what happens is he goes Bekoev. I'll say Bekoev. The funny thing that he does here is he lands legal ground and pound for the first, like, 2-3 shots, and then his hand kind of swings to the back of Reese's head, and then he lands legal ground and pound for a little bit, and then again to the back of Reese's head, and then legal shots, and that's the finish. So this isn't a case where he's repeatedly hitting the back of his head to where I think the ref can step in. I don't know. It's a very questionable finish. That's pretty much all I can say there. That's all I can kind of give it. We go to the next honorable mention. That's Talbott versus Barcellos. I remember when this fight got announced, I was like, oh, this is a big test for him. I remember it in my head. And the critique on Talbott is that technically he really hasn't faced anyone. And I know Simons is Cameron Simons is his best opponent to date. But he hasn't fought anybody, nor has he faced any real level of adversity. And I think the reason why we all probably thought that Talbot was going to win is because we all thought Barcellos was just going to strike with him. And that wasn't the case. That was not the case. I had this 30-27 for Barcellos. In the first round, Barcellos had 2 takedowns with some ground and pound and a submission attempt for about 3+ minutes. Kevin Ioli and one judge thought this was a 10-8. Definitely not a 10-8. I get that he had him there for 3 minutes and he had 2 takedowns, but this wasn't round 3 ground and pound from Barcellos. This was round 1 ground and pound. This was just regular routine ground and pound. There's no need for a 10-8 here. There really is no need for a 10-8. You go to the second round, even on the feet. The strikes are kind of even on the feet, but Barcellos had 3 takedowns with some ground and pound. And then in the third round, Talbot slightly outstruck Barcellos on the feet. Barcellos had 2 takedowns with a lot of ground and pound. Talbot had a takedown as well, but Barcellos had 2 takedowns with a lot of ground and pound. It's his round, 30-27 to Barcellos. You know the judges' scorecards, all the Chris Lieben, Jonathan Romero, their scorecards reflect mine, 30-27, and then Chris Carell, his scorecard reflects mine, other than the first round, which he gives a 10-8 to Barcellos. It's an unnecessary 10-8. It's an unnecessary 10-8. There's no need for that soon. We go to the next honorable mention, and that is the fight that really had me mad up until the end. Now, remember, I wasn't scoring this when I was watching this live. I was kind of just enjoying it. And watching it live and scoring it, 2 different feelings. 2 different feelings. For one, the TV was, I don't want to say it was far away. It was pretty close up, but it wasn't as close up as my screen is when I'm scoring. But I can say this for certain. When you're watching it as a fan, sometimes I feel as though, when you're watching it as a fan, it almost looks like you're watching 2 different fights. It really is. It almost looks like you're watching 2 totally different fights. And what I mean by that is, when I watched it live, the showboating, not only, I don't find it disgusting in the sense that it's showboating. It's entertainment. I like that part. It's showboating, and I feel like it's affecting the scorecards. That's 1. 2, when you're watching it live, sometimes the optics of the fight can really change how it's supposed to be scored. Really. The commentary is not helpful, but they were actually a little better here. Anik was saying, I don't think he should showboat in a very close round. But a part of me feels like the showboating in a certain round helped him a lot. I really think it did, because you can argue this fight goes to Nurmagomedov. You can argue it. I didn't score it that way, but you can argue it. Let's start off with I had this 48-47 for Dvalishvili versus Nurmagomedov. 48-47. I give the last 3 rounds to Dvalishvili. In the first 2 rounds to Nurmagomedov. Okay, you go to the first round. We'll start off with the first round. In the first round, I put a close marker on it. It's close. They're trading back and forth. They're almost even on strikes until the end, where Nurmagomedov lands the really big strike at the end that stuns Dvalishvili. That strike basically wins him the round. He outstrikes him by about 1 to 2 strikes. I put the close marker there because the strikes are so close. Right, but truly this round goes to Nurmagomedov because of that big shot he lands at the very end of the first round. You go to the second round. This is pretty clear. Nurmagomedov outstrikes Dvalishvili by about 12 plus strikes. Very, very clear. We go to the third round where the tide starts to change, right? Nurmagomedov is outstriking Dvalishvili. The strikes start to become even. They start to go in the direction of Dvalishvili. Then they start to go even. Here's the deciding factor for me are these takedowns. First of all, this is where, when Anik starts to mention the takedowns, I'm thinking to myself, hold on. Merab just threw him to the ground we don't count those as takedowns. We've never counted those as takedowns. Usually you have to get on top of him. He just throws him down and then he walks away. Is that a takedown? That takedown's kind of iffy. Very, very iffy. So in my head, I'm thinking, that's not a takedown. He just threw him to the ground. But okay, whatever. So he mentions that, so I'm just like, okay, I'll count it as a takedown. Nurmagomedov gets a takedown. Dvalishvili gets, this time, an actual takedown. And that's the difference to me in this round. By the way, towards the end of the round, Nurmagomedov is trying to take him down, and then Merab is just going, look, you can't take me down. That optic, while I was watching it live, it appeared as though Nurmagomedov was winning when I was watching it live, but scoring it, I'm like, it's a lot closer. And him doing the showboating thing, I feel as though influenced the judging slightly. We go to the fourth round. Dvalishvili has 3 takedowns, and he outstrikes Nurmagomedov by about 17 plus strikes. This is where he just pours it on. Okay, he outstrikes him by about 17 plus strikes. He has 3 takedowns. Again, they're overcounting takedowns. Every time he throws him on the ground is not a takedown. It's just not. And they're overcounting. To the point where we get to the 5th round. Dvalishvili has 2 takedowns and slightly outstrikes Nurmagomedov. Okay. The optics in this round of this whole fight, the optics were just so weird. And then they proceed to tell us that Dvalishvili just broke GSP's record for takedowns. I don't even think that's accurate. How many of... I'm counting 3, 2... oh my god, I'm counting 1, 2, 3... I'm counting... It's 4 plus 3, that's 7. 7. I'm counting 7 to 8. 7 to 8 takedowns liberally. I'm truly lost. I'm truly lost on just how this whole fight turned around. That third round is a really deciding factor because they're counting that as a takedown. And let's say he wins. Let's say he wins this round. I think he won this round. Why are we counting that as a takedown? I really don't understand. We go to the judges' scorecards, and all 3 judges' scorecards, Chris Lieben, Chris Crail, Mike Bell, 3 to 5, their scorecards reflect the same as mine. But Chris Crail gives the first round to Dvalishvili. I put a close marker there just to be objective, but I don't think that's the correct scorecard. 10-9 to Dvalishvili in the first round is kind of nonsense. So, there. Honorable mention for that. Makhachev wins by submission. That's it. That's pretty much it for the card. Other than that, after watching it live, I felt bleh. And after scoring it up close, I feel even more bleh. So, there you have it on that. Thank you all for listening to me sound retarded. Thank you all for listening, and God bless.